believe we are live.
You should say 3, 2, 1, that kind of thing.
It didn't, but it didn't.
It didn't?
No. Do I go back and... It didn't do the 3, 2, 1 thing. But according to this, it's rolling.
Well, there's nothing live yet.
Okay.
On here. I'm seeing nothing live.
According to this, it is live.
Yes, you are live.
Ah!
You might want to hit pause.
Hello. Why don't I... Hello everyone. I've come in a few minutes early. Trying out something new today. So I'm hoping this will work well. Just bear with me if you've joined and wait for us to start. I do want to start at 7. Otherwise it's not fair to people that log in at 7. But I wanted to come in a bit early today because we're trying something new, and I'm really hoping this works because I think it will make your viewing experience a lot better. So let me see if I can see anybody joining. Looks like we're live. That's wonderful. That pleases me. Oh, somebody has made a comment, so that's great. Just a moment or two to go. Oh, a little bit more than a moment or two. But anyway, I hope you're all well. It's very warm here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But we are fortunate. I'm in my studio here in Lancaster and we're making progress. You can see some of my friends behind me. You can see Prue from Peru, the alpaca. You can see a few more of my little menagerie, Dougal, my lovely mohair sheep, or my goat, Cutlet, and there's 2 new ones, Flory, my little striped sheep there, and Snooky. I love the black sheep, I think they're gorgeous. 2 new ones, and then I won't pick the others up because they're harder to balance, but some fun little characters behind me. They're all part of my woolly menagerie. So the studio, I would show you the rest of the studio, but there is still a way to go, and it's a bit of a mess up that end. This is the tidy end where I can broadcast from, but very soon it'll all be splendid, and I can't wait for that. But I'm very fortunate to have this even in its present state. So we're coming up to 7 o'clock. I hope you're well, and I hope wherever you are, you're not suffering from any floods or too much heat. I know across the US there's all sorts of weather problems, and I wish you well through all that. Okay. Yes, we will have an episode. As soon as the studio is completely done, we'll have an episode where I'll give you a little tour of it and how it looks. Yeah, you wouldn't want to see it at the moment. Just 7 o'clock. Right, we will start. I do not need that. Sorry, something popped up there, which I do not want. Anyway, welcome to Knit and Matters. This is Season 3, Episode 11. And thank you for joining me, whether you're watching live or the replay later. I am delighted that you're here. I'm Cheryl Lampard. I'm an image consultant. I'm a fibre artist. I'm a knitting educator. I'm a craft yarn council instructor. And I used to own a yarn store in Brighton, England. And part of the joy of owning a yarn store is that I got to teach people how to knit. I loved doing it then, and I love doing it now. Now today, we're trying something out, something new that hopefully will make your viewing experience a lot better. So I have no iPad and no cameraman today. I'm actually streaming from the laptop, and I have a second webcam in front of me in the workplace on the worktop to switch between them. So when I switch from full screen to worktop, you should still be able to see me in a corner of the screen, so you can sort of stay connected with me throughout. Needless to say, this exercise wasn't exactly plug and play like the instructions say, and practicing it was quite something. And there's still a few glitches to be ironed out, so bear with me on that, but I am giving it a go. So at the moment I'm aiming for progress rather than perfection at this point. Anyway, thank you so much for your questions that I asked you for last week. Some will be answered today, others in part 2, because that'll relate to the subjects that we're going to cover then. But today it's part 1 of sweater design basics, and it's a big topic, so we are going to split it into those parts. But even then, it's still a snapshot of the elements to consider and the phases involved in the design process. So you might think, well, why design your own sweater? Well, you might not be able to find the perfect pattern for you, and you might need to customize the fit. That's very often the catalyst for wanting to design your own sweater. Now, many of you have done some designing without even realizing it. So if you've changed a neckline, if you've changed a sleeve, if you've added some extra stitch work, or even changed the pattern in that way, and done a completely different neckline, collar, you've actually gone some way towards the process of designing your own garment. Another reason is it might simply be the desire to create something start to finish. You may never want to do it more than once, but there's a lot of people that like the challenge of doing that. I'm one of those kind of people. So there was a question asked by several viewers, including Hayley, Kim and Melissa. And the question was, where and how do I start the design process? My recommendation is to start with the who, what and how. So is the sweater, is the garment for you? Is it for your partner? Is it for a friend? Is it for a child? Is it for a teenager? Because designing for somebody else can actually be trickier than doing it for yourself. You know what you like, you know your taste, you know your preferences for colours and fit and things like that. It's actually harder to know that for other people. And I do see posts on social media sometimes where there's a lovingly made gift and it's presented to somebody, and then the recipient's reaction is less than stellar. And that's just a shame all round. So the person that's knitted it feels very despondent, and the person that's received it feels disappointed. But our tastes and our colour preferences might not be the same as those of the person that we want to gift it to or that we're doing it for. So we need to have a clear idea of their likes and dislikes. And we also need to know whether they have any problems wearing certain fibres next to their skin. If somebody is allergic to wool and you do the most beautiful sweater, unfortunately they're probably never going to wear it because it's just too uncomfortable for them. So those are things to consider. Another thing to consider is, what type of garment is it? Is it going to be an everyday garment, or is it kind of for high days and holidays? Is it going to be an outdoor garment? For example, if it's going to be exposed to a variety of weather conditions, the yarn choice is really paramount there. You're not going to want a rugged garment done in a beautiful fine silk. That's just not going to work. So you need to consider those things. Where will it be worn? Now that may seem an odd question, but I'm a Brit who moved from the UK to Florida and spent 13 plus years in Florida. Now, I hardly ever wore a sweater except when I was travelling back to the UK or somewhere colder. So knitting a sweater for me would have, or somebody that lives in a hot climate, it's going to probably sit in a drawer and only be worn on certain occasions. So again, the yarn composition is something to think about, and the type of garment that they would want. I mean, one of the great joys now living in Pennsylvania is that I can wear my sweaters, yay! So considering those elements, they might be small things, but they're actually really quite large things, because they'll help you decide on the type of garment that you want to make, and they'll inform your design choices. Now the next thing really is inspiration. So while you need a clear idea of what you're aiming for, you also need inspiration. And inspiration comes from just about anywhere, often nothing to do with knitting. Now I am going to now go to the worktop to see. You should be able to see my hands. So you should be able to see the worktop in a moment, and you should be able to see me in the corner. If you can, that's wonderful. So, inspiration. Well, what are we talking about? We can get inspiration from just about anywhere. Let me just move. I need to move the keyboard out of the way there. Don't need that. So, then it might be magazines. It might be books. This is quite an old book, but there's still some really nice designs in there, you know, that are just as sort of worthwhile today as they were when the book came out. I know my sister-in-law was actually knitting from this book a while ago. Very simple summer sweater, but it's still as relevant today as it was then. So, you know, books, great inspiration. Don't have to be knitting books. Could be all sorts of things. What about this is a greetings card that was sent to me. And I love the colours. So you might get inspiration just from the colour choices. So all of those things. And the reason I put this magazine here, this is a retro Mary Maxim book, but look how dynamic that is. I mean, the poses are very retro, but the vintage, very, very on trend. So seek inspiration from anything that grabs you. Let me get those out of the way. It could be from some fabric. This, I think, is fabulous. This is yellow. This is a floral fabric from Kay Fassett. And Kay Fassett is famous for colourful decorative designs. He's done books on knitting, needlepoint, all sorts of things. He's an artist in his own right. But he takes inspiration from all sorts of things. And what fascinated me when I read one of his books is that there were photographs of lichens growing on stone walls. So he takes photos of things like that and picks colours from them. Even the stone wall itself, the different colours, the colours of seashells, anything like that. It doesn't have to be sort of the big picture. He picks things from small things. Now, there's a fabric that I have here that I particularly like, that I intend to make something of it. But look at the interesting things here. I mean, there's all sorts of things there I could grab inspiration from. The butterfly, the bird, this lovely purple butterfly down here, this sort of soft little robin's egg in the corner. There's hundreds of things I could grab inspiration from there, and often do. When I had my yarn store, I used to spend my one day off in the week looking at museums and looking at textiles, carpets, pottery, architecture. And I wouldn't copy the entire design. I would just hone in on one part of the detail. Maybe it was taking note of an unusual colour combination of inspiration, something like that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I have a beautiful carpet bag here. I think I may have to go. Oh, you can see me in the small picture here. I won't be able to fit this under the desk camera. Let me just switch to the main one for a moment. So this lovely carpet bag, a gift from my husband. I'm working on a cowl pattern for this, and I'm going to just pick certain elements. Maybe it'll be this sort of pattern up here, or the very small one along here. I'm not going to take the big pattern because it's going to be for a cowl, but I'll take certain elements and then I'll change them. I won't necessarily do it exactly as it is, but that serves as an inspiration. So let's just go back here. So anything, and what you need to do is to start collecting ideas. Create a mood board. You can do that on physically with a pin board. You can do it on apps like Pinterest and do it digitally. Whichever way you do it, and you can do it both ways if you wish. Do whatever works best for you, but start collecting things, pictures, colours. Just pin them up or add them to the app, whatever works for you, so that you get this sort of collection that you can later edit down. The other thing you can do, those are things that you need to do. So once you've formulated certain ideas, you can actually start a sketch. Well, I hear some of you saying, "Oh, I can't draw, I can't sketch." Well, that's maybe the case, but I do hear designers say, knitting designers in particular say, if I can sketch it, I can knit it. That's actually quite important to remember. If you could put it down on paper, there is a way to design and knit it, but you need some sort of tangible way of doing that, of getting your ideas on paper. So one of the things that you can do, and what you have to remember, let me see, I'm forgetting to switch camera. I'm sorry about that. I'll get better at this, I promise. I need to go here. Sorry, that's where I needed to go. One of the things you can do, you can download body shapes. If you can't draw very well, and you don't have to, this is not a fashion illustration. The idea is to get just some designs down on paper. They can be like little stick drawings if you wish. But the idea is to sort of formulate some kind of tangible look. So you could download these body shapes. These are obviously fashion illustration ones. Here's one for men as well. Some are free, some you have to pay for. The other thing that you can do is there are notebooks, fashion notebooks. This is very faint for you to see, but I think you can just see there are outlines there. And you can draw on the top of them. And there's lots of pages in this one. You could just draw over the top, or you can sort of trace the outlines. And then just do your sweater drawing. Now, one thing I would say is that you need to be a bit careful, or just bear in mind that the proportions of a croquis, these are called croquis, which is French for sketch, the proportions of these fashion croquis, they may not be the same as yours. You know, they're quite elongated. They are meant for fashion illustration, but it does give you a good idea of the sort of where you want to put your sleeve length, where you want to put your neckline, that sort of thing. Still gives you a good idea of what your sweater will look like. So don't be afraid to do several sketches. That's the way you're going to refine your design and edit it down, because ultimately you're going to have to probably edit a few things. You'll see how you like the look of things on your sketch, and then you'll probably have to edit them. Sorry, putting my hand across the camera, shouldn't do that. Okay, the other thing we need to think about, and this is important at this point, is the garment silhouette. There are lots of interesting sweater shapes. They're generally all variations of three basic shapes for the sweater body. This is what I'm talking about, the torso, the sweater body. And those three basic shapes are the sort of the fitted shape, if you like, slightly more hourglassy, the straight shape, and an A-line shape, where it sort of flares out a little bit at the bottom of the hem. So look at sweaters already in your closet. They can be machine made, they can be a purchase sweater, or a hand knit, something you've already done. But start thinking about which silhouette looks best on you. Maybe you've only got one particular silhouette. Well, that's just fine. If you like the way it looks and like the way it fits, that could be the basis for your sweater design. Is your preference for it to be shaped in at the waist? Is it straighter? You also should probably consider elements that you don't like as much. If you're fortunate enough to have several different shapes of sweater, have a look at yourself in several of them and decide, think about why you don't like something as much as the other one that you tried on, because that's just as relevant. The last thing you want to do is sort of design a sweater in a shape that you've never tried before and don't know if it works for you, do all that work and then find you really don't like it on you. So those are things that you need to think about. You also need to think about the garment length. Do you want your sweater cropped? Do you want it really, short and cropped? Do you want it hip length? Do you want it tunic length? Or do you want it longer? You're the designer. You can do what you like. You can also think about the sleeve length. Do you want a short sleeve? Do you want a elbow length? Do you want a longer sleeve? I know that for me, I prefer a bracelet length sleeve or a 3/4 length. If I ever do a short sleeve, it's going to be kind of a long short sleeve, to my elbow. But my preferences are for a 3/4 sleeve or a bracelet length sleeve. But I could change that depending on the sweater style. If I was going to do a sort of bolero kind of sweater, I might not do a long sleeve. The proportion might not work so well. So again, you're the designer. Anything can be changed, but it helps to know what works for you as a starting point. Now, lastly, for this particular episode, I had a great question from Katrina, who wanted to know about garment ease. Now, I'm going to bring the camera back to me for this one and talk to you on this one. So, garment ease, what is that? Well, garment ease is what designers build into the pattern to create the look that they want. So you have negative ease and positive ease. And what that means in simplest terms is that it's the body measurements, your body measurements, plus or minus some inches. So for example, a tight-fitting sweater, a really tight-fitting sweater would have a negative ease of 2 to 4 inches. Meaning that, let's say you're doing it for a 36-inch bust or chest, the actual garment might only measure 34 inches at that particular point. Because we're designing for knitting. It's not a woven fabric that we're doing here, it's knitting. And by the very nature of a knit fabric, it's going to stretch out a bit from the stitch pattern and the yarn. So the actual garment size may be smaller than the body measurement that it's going to fit for a really snug sweater. For something a little less snug, but still kind of body skimming and close fitting, you would have 0 ease. So that means that the sweater measurement across the chest, let's just keep it to across the chest at the moment, will be the same as the actual individual's bust or chest measurement. Then you'd have classic fit, which gives some positive ease. That means it's a comfortable fit. You're going to get 2 to 4 inches larger than the body measurement. And a loose fitting garment could have anything like 4 to 6 inches larger than the bust or chest. And an oversized slouchy garment can have several inches of positive ease, maybe as much as 6 to 8 inches more than the body measurement. And that's what the designer has in mind when they have designed the sweater. And in many patterns, you'll see it gives the sizing and the actual measurement, the actual sweater, the finished sweater size. Better yet, when a pattern has a schematic, you'll actually see the dimensions at every point of the sweater, and you'll see the outline of the shape. So super helpful when you have patterns with a schematic, but you're designing your own. It doesn't mean to say that you can't start from a favorite sweater pattern. Now, when you're trying on your sweaters, think about whether your favorite sweater fits like a second skin, or is it roomy and slouchy? Do you want your design to be like that, or do you want to trim it down or make it larger? Think about those things. And as I say, if you have a sweater that's made from a pattern that you love in terms of shape and size, start with that. When I designed exclusive sweater kits for my store, I always started with a basic sweater shape. Garment makers start with a basic block. I did the knitting equivalent that. I used the same principle. I started from a sweater shape that I knew worked and was graded into different sizes, and I went from there. And often I changed it completely, but it was a really good starting point. So there's something I want you to do between now and next week, because part 2 we're going to be looking at measurements and amongst other things. But the measurements that we're going to be looking at may not be the ones that you expect, and some of the most important measurements are probably not the ones that you expect. So between now and then, I'm going to switch to the worktop again. I would like you to just, first of all, try on some of your favourite sweaters. Have a look, note the fit that you like, the shape, etc. Then what you can do is lay the sweater flat on a table or something, whatever you want. I'm just going to kind of fold mine in half a bit here, but lay it flat, fills the space here. But what I want you to do is measure the actual sweater across, say, at the chest, so sort of under the arms there to the other side. Keep it flat, measure across, make a note of what that is. Then, if it's a fitted sweater especially, measure where the waist is across, make a note of that. And at the bottom, at the hemline, make a note of that. Measure from side to side, from seam to seam. measure what that might be and make a note of that. And have them handy for next week. As I say, we'll be looking at the measurements that you need to take for designing your sweater, amongst other things. And we'll be looking at how to actually change measurements if you're working from a sort of a pattern and you're changing it. We'll look at how to alter it, to add and to take away. We'll also start looking at how to work out the gauge if you need a specific measurement or you're really altering something down for your sweater. So I hope that was helpful to you, and I hope that's given you some things to think about. As I say, between now and next episode, please do that little exercise if you'd like to, and then join me again next time. So as always, this episode and others can be found on Knitting Matters page, and it will be uploaded to YouTube within 24 hours. This one is season 3, episode 11, and it's part 1. So you can watch the replay later if you wish. Do keep your questions coming. Please give me some more questions. I've got some from last week that are relevant for next week, but do give me some more and let me have those by the end of this week, which would be wonderful. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, keep well, keep calm, and keep knitting. Bye-bye for now.